Well, apparently it's World Goth Day, so I thought I'd do a rant ramble about it. I don't really have any plans, but I did dress appropriately. What is this? See? I don't only wear black. This is navy, by the way, but I am cheating a little bit, I guess, because my hair still has a bit of black in it. It's probably all faded to brown and no, I'll put red over it anyway. And then boots, they're black. And the inside of my soul is black, if you believe in souls. No, I just thought, let's talk about the goth thing. Because, I kind of have thrown the label around casually. And what better day to talk about it than World Goth Day? Am I a goth? Long story short, I don't think so. I don't actually really see myself as goth. I don't really hold that label. But I tend to use it anyway because it's the closest thing that just explains things quickly, especially to family, and then you don't have to go through the exact specifics of what goth is and why I don't quite fit it and what am I actually, and I don't fit anything else. So, and I know this is me trying to avoid labels again and trying to avoid communities again, and sue me, I'm schizoid, I don't like communities, I can't help myself, Anyway, but no, so, goth, yeah, why don't I think I'm goth? Well, why do I use the label is because when I first started dressing dark, family would call me emo because at the time emo was becoming popular, and I'm like, no. So I went for the goth label because it made a bit more sense, it was closer. And I just don't know of other labels that fit that mainstream even knows what they are. And then my style was probably more influenced from that. But I don't actually really listen to goth music. I have one Susie and the Banshees CD and one The Cure CD. And actually, I don't listen to much music in general because I'm still determined to buy CDs or Bandcamp if I can. I don't even listen to, I don't listen to Spotify. I can't stand those kinds of things. I want to just buy the music and not have to stream it. And I don't like the way streaming companies treat people. It's not even my music. My music is not on Spotify. It's only on Bandcamp, unless it's a collab or a band I've done with someone else. I'm one of the few musicians who's actually being stubborn and being no, I'm gonna stick up for my values and not go there. But I'm also not trying to be famous or successful. So I can shoot myself in the foot. But yeah, so what? Susie and the Banshees, The Cure. I don't like most of that. Anyway, there's Susie and the Banshees, Cities in Dust, and Peekaboo. Those are two songs I quite like. They're quite fun. Then The Cure. I have one CD that I think might have been just gathering their hits or something. So it might even have been after their official goth phase when they became a bit more popular. And I gotta tell you, with those songs, some of the instrumentals start off sounding kind of cool, and then the singer, if we're gonna call him that, opens his mouth, and I cannot. And this is something that a lot of I don't know what goth music is like now, if it's still even a thing, but the whole traditional 80s thing, and that low energy way of singing, I can't. Especially the boys with that, it's fine to sing in low pitch, but it just, I don't vibe with that tone. And if you've heard my music, I like to have the energy in there because I live a low energy life, so my music needs to pick me up a bit more. I can do sad songs sometimes, but not as a whole genre of everything I listen to. So technically, if I don't listen to goth music by the old school definition, that disqualifies me from being a goth. But what do I do? What do I listen to? Mostly metal and industrial. Industrial something kind of, it counts as goth in some ways, depending on who you ask. It's not traditional 80s music all the time, but I don't know, 9 Inch Nails, Android Lust, they're big in the goth scene, especially cybergoth, I guess. I don't know, I can't even remember which labels go for which thing anymore because there's too many of them. But I'm not listening to heaps of industrial, and I'm very specific about the types of industrial I like. I don't like dance-style industrial, where it's mostly doof, 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 with dark synths and, occasional lyrics. I need the more song style, so that's why 9 Inch Nails, Android Lust, they have more of that song style. But without... it's hard to describe what I'm into, the specific kinds of songs. Yeah. And then when it comes to metal, I'm also labeled as a metalhead, but I actually don't like most metal, and I also don't give a shit for this distinction between metal and core. You know, the hardcore scene, the metal scene, and then metalcore in between, and I'm just like, I don't have the energy to like keep making distinctions. Symphonic metal is an easy one to distinguish, but I only listen to certain parts of that as well. I kind of just pick and choose the ones I like instead of being loyal to a genre, but I'm more likely to be interested in metal. Why don't I call myself a metalhead as much as I call myself a goth? Because I don't dress like a metalhead. Do metalheads even have a style dress? Like, it's usually just band shirt, jeans. And I've noticed there is a difference, though, in metal and core audiences, at least in Sydney. Like, I prefer metal audiences because they're actually they're respectful. They do headbang, but it's like in this sort of pleasant way when no one's really getting in each other's way, and there's a bit more respect in general. And then you've got the core audiences where people flail their arms and kick and whatever. Even in the smallest venue in Sydney, they will do that, so that me as a small female, I have to like hide somewhere, or I often just leave if it gets like that. I don't have time for that shit. Yeah, and I don't really want to be standing right up the back behind a wall of big smelly dudes that I can't see anything, and like, what's the point of being there? I might as well just come home, chuck on some music on the computer, have a better audio experience, and a better, more comfortable experience in general. Why was I going on about that? Oh, dress codes. I don't know, when I can be bothered to dress up, it's much more likely to be in the goth styles, but also, when it comes to fashion, things have changed a lot. Like, back in the day, you had to modify your own clothes, and I did go through a phase of attempting that, but I don't have that skill, and I don't have the patience or obsession to get very good at that. Some of you might have seen some of my old experiments, because before, Microsoft used to have its own spaces thing, and I'm just thinking, did I actually check my microphone? Okay, I think it's working. Hopefully I'm actually recording audio, otherwise this is going to be very awkward and I'll just release a silent video, which would still be on brand with my channel. No, so, what was I just talking about? Oh dear. Yeah, no, I did try altering clothes, I did try going to op shops. The trouble is, I live in a conservative area, the op shops around here, there's just nothing to find. You want black pants, they're just gonna be black work pants, and there's only so much you can do with it. I used to buy dog chains from the $2 shop to get some safety pins, hang them on my pants. I couldn't afford the fancy boots in the city, so I just got some more regular boots. I think probably a family member. It might have been my wise godmother who got me those. I've still got them somewhere, but they're like proper leather, and if you don't wear them enough, they get all hard again. And my poor little delicate feet, because I never go anywhere, I spent too much time being depressed and just generally unwell, that my feet mostly just want to be in the Ugg boots. So yeah, I just don't even wear shoes much, generally. Like, there's so much space in these. It's just a warm way to feel like I'm not even wearing shoes anyway. But yeah, no, and way back, holy shit, what year is it? Almost 20 years ago. The most goth place in Sydney was Newtown, and so I just scraped in at the end of that era where there were still some goth shops. Like Gallery Serpentine was still a thing. They're the corset shop, and they also had some really interesting clothes, and I still have some of their stuff, but they ended up closing that shop and sort of just becoming a, appointment only, I don't know, warehouse or something, and then they moved to Melbourne, and I haven't been to Melbourne. I would like to go someday, but I need a better reason than just I'd like to go. Like, if I was playing music down there, I would go, obviously, because I'd have to be there to play the music. I think that's what it would take to get me to Melbourne, is to play a show there. Which isn't going to happen anytime soon, because trying to find shows in Sydney that understand what I'm about, practically impossible. I've been so lucky with the gig I did last year at Crowbar, which is more of a metal venue. Like, no one does the kind of thing that I do. Oh, yeah, I do have that paint stain. What was I talking about again? Yeah, clothes. I did try. Okay, so, I could buy a few Goths bits and pieces in Newtown. I got a nice corset that I have to this day, which is still my best corset, from Gallery Serpentine. It's more of a dance corset, so it's not like proper steel boning, and you can move in it more easily, but it's like nicely built and not one of these cheap ones that you get online, which I also have some of those now. What else did I get from there? I got my first spikes from Newtown. Their op shop was a little bit better, but I still didn't really find a huge amount of stuff that was interesting, and I didn't know how to modify anything. I grew up conservative area, Catholic school, didn't really have friends because schizoid. Like, I had friends, but they were like, they mostly hung out with me because I was good at maths and science, and they wanted to copy my homework kind of thing. I haven't talked to any of them in years. Yeah, actually, the people I talk most to did taekwondo with me. Oh, there was one girl from my grade who did, but yeah, no, we don't talk or hang out these days. Yeah, so like and this is like, I just didn't have anyone to help guide me through this, and I wasn't really like online. I didn't know where to find anything online. It's not like today we can just look up things so easily. So I didn't have access to a lot of the more goth stuff or alternative or whatever. I didn't, the first time also that I tried to go to a goth club, I was like, when I turned 18, I was there probably way too early, had no idea what was going on, ended up talking to this older dude who was a bit weird and wasn't even goth, like he was there for the thing before the thing started, and eventually just like called my parents to take me home because I was just like, I don't know why I'm here, I don't know what I expected, this is not. So I probably didn't even get up to the goth stuff. I could see people setting up, but yeah. So yeah, no, I tried making my own clothes. Where am I going with this? Sorry, I don't have notes. This is why I'm going in circles and rambling. But yeah, that's sort of like the early experimentation I did. Yeah, I actually did modify some pants pretty poorly. Sewed some rings onto them, and I don't know, there might be photos of this somewhere. I think maybe DeviantArt might have some still, but Microsoft used to have one, and then it died, and I think somehow, like, it was Spaces, Live Spaces, or I don't know, and I think somehow that got migrated to my Facebook, because I don't have the pictures. I probably got them saved somewhere, but online, the pictures didn't get transferred across, but the blogs that I wrote on my old Microsoft profile got transferred to Facebook somehow, and I found them like years later and was like, when did this happen? Anyway, so yeah, and I only got into all this alternative stuff after I left school because I didn't even know it was really a thing. Like, I remember seeing some sort of goth punk chicks once at the mall on the northern beaches, and that's about it. Like, you just didn't see goths around. It was probably too late for it. Honestly, the thing that informed me that goth was a thing properly in a way that stuck in my brain was Danny Phantom. Let's do it, there's DVDs there. Because the Danny Phantom, his main girl interest, but not really until the very end, she's goth, and it was kind of funny looking at that, and then I'm like, oh, this is probably the closest thing to what I'm after. I just, didn't like the music once I found it, mostly, and ended up in metal, mostly, but not really. Like, I don't listen to Metallica. I know maybe 2 songs, and I only like one. The one song that I like from Metallica is Sad But True. Go and look up the lyrics and you'll see why, because I am so predictable. Don't listen to a lot of the classic metal bands. Pick and choose, mostly listen to a lot of local stuff, and don't listen to Spotify, so I don't even know what's big, and then some of it is technically probably more metalcore or whatever. I don't care. Anyway, so that's my history, I guess, with goth experimentation. These days things are different because obviously you can buy more stuff online, and I accidentally got that Punk Rave Australia thing where I was reviewing a lot of their goth clothing, and that actually helped me start buying things online, because before that, so I guess in that there's an early goth phase of experimentation after leaving school, trying to find my way, which I've just constantly been lost, and then there's today, but in the middle, I did realize, if I go to Japan and Harajuku, I can get like Harajuku goth stuff, which is its own thing. It's kind of divorced from all the, Western whatever. Hello? Oh, I've been sent some stuff. I will get on to that later. And he thinks, so Mum tends to text us when dinner is ready. It is 2:40 in the afternoon, and he's like, why did that text message go off? And he's just checking on us. Wow, I'm super distracted. No, there was that sort of in-between phase where to find interesting clothes at all, because I was struggling to modify stuff. I did go to Newtown a few times, but there's not always things that I liked. I did find a few pants that I liked. I went to the markets and found a few things. And then, you kind of accessorize and put stuff together. But I don't know how I did that. You can barely even see it on camera now. Yeah, Harajuku. Because I'm half Japanese, go and visit family, and then like, hey, look, there's these interesting shops. But even Harajuku is sort of settling down as far as the more goth fashion. There's still alternative fashion, but a little bit less goth, because I know some of the stores. Drug Honey, I'm pretty sure, is dead. AC/DC Rag is still going, and they have like half bright stuff, half goth stuff. I think Sexpot Tokyo might still be a thing, but I don't know if they're just online or if they still have the shop. And they had their Osaka one as well. I'm not really sure. I've seen their stuff online. I don't know where their shop is because I haven't been in so long. And then, who else? Who else was big in Harajuku for the stuff I like? Those are probably the main ones. Oh, there's also Morris Rock, the Richards store, where outside the front it's all like fuck off fucking foreigner kind of. And you're like, yeah, all right, mate. Yeah, anyway, so I did that for a bit, and then, yeah, now I got that Punk Rave Australia online ordering, started following some of the local goth brand stockists, so Berserk mainly, which I still haven't posted any of these reviews. Tragic Beautiful, although at the moment they're apparently not responding to support, even though the website keeps updating, so yeah, I'm a bit reluctant to order anything from them. And those are probably the two main ones in Australia. Yeah, that stock anything, but it's the market is pretty, a lot of it's boring now and a bit too safe, and I'm just like, okay, and I've got enough clothes that I don't wear. So that's like fashion. Anyway, no, so, I mean, the fashion side of things, when I dress up, categorized probably more as goth, but then I turn up to metal shows wearing all this stuff, and I do tend to get compliments from people. I also get compliments just around here for not even dressing up that much, the spiked hoodie and the little cat on my shoulder. I really don't have to do much to impress the people in the conservative area, which is kind of funny. Like, what's more fun, going to Newtown and dressing how everyone there dresses, or staying in a conservative area and freaking them out and giving them something to think about? I think that, hanging around here is a bit more fun. But anyway, yeah, no, and then Newtown has sort of gradually declined a lot of the goth shops, not just Gallery Serpentine. Invisible Light, they were a costume shop, and, the lady did get attacked, so that probably added to her not wanting to hang around. Pretty much her dreads, her epic dreads, are what saved her from, like, an axe attack, so there you go. Reasons to get dreads. And then, there were a few other shops that stock stuff, but not very much, and so now it's just Dangerfield, which isn't really, it's more like punk or emo, or I don't know, I don't go in there, it's not the stuff that I'm into, like maybe even rockabilly, but dark, I don't know. And then, Off Your Tree is more like drug culture, weed culture, I don't know, I don't go in there either. So there's not really anywhere to shop in Sydney. And, like, I've been into op shops, and they still don't have much that you can work with, especially not in this area. Like, just to find something black is a start. That's not work pants. Yeah, so there's some challenges to being goth in this area, but, like, one of the reasons I bring up all this stuff about, me exploring, but I also kind of end up doing my own thing, and, I'm not attached to any communities. I can't even do the schizoid community. And to label myself is difficult because I kind of just want to be me, which is kind of the old traditional, like, 90s attitude, whereas these days everyone's trying to claim different labels, like right down to mental illness labels, but, or subculture labels, and gender labels and all these kinds of things, I can't. I find it weird to just slap a label on me, because if I slap a label on me, you know, there's almost a pressure in some ways to conform to that. And I'm like, no, I just, you can label me whatever you like. I'm just gonna still do my own thing. So yeah, there's kind of a, oh, there's my shoulder cat. Yeah, but so the reason I bring up all this stuff, well, there's always been goth purists, and this is where I'm like, okay, maybe you can still count me as a goth, but it depends who you ask, because there's the more open goths who are just like, you know, if you want to call yourself goth, you're a goth, that's fine. But then there are ones who are like, no, you have to like that music, and you have to have these attitudes, and blah, 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 and can be very negative. And actually those goth elitists are another reason that I don't want to be considered goth, because, ew. Anyway, so like, I don't know, there's just this one chick that I've seen, and, you know, I don't mean to attack her specifically, because I think she has a point. Angela Benedict has come up in my feed a few times, and I've watched her stuff a bit, and she is one who, like, grew up in the heyday of goth. You know, she's born in, I think, the 70s. I don't even know. I can't remember. But she's like at least a decade older than me. And she's very passionate about the more traditional goth, and she talks a lot about her background and all this kind of thing, like what is counterculture really, and blah, blah, blah. And then compared to today's, you know, the Instagramification of subcultures, and the more aesthetic thing, and all the brands who've become increasingly commercialized. Like, even the brands that started off with the right idea, like I think even Killstar started off as just like friends doing what they do, but then it's, did someone buy it? I don't know. And then it's just become more and more corporate and safe and boring and profit driven, which is the natural flow of things. You can't stop it. When I think about the whole question, am I goth? According to her, definitely not. But, you know, there's some things, though, that she says that I'm just like, okay, you know, she's very passionate about counterculture, but then she's doing the whole thing of, like, and a lot of them do this. A lot of them do the things I'm going to say, so I'm not trying to single her out. She's just the one that I know who is definitely doing a lot of this stuff. Is like, yeah, counterculture, but still doing this kids these days, which every generation has done for as far as we, like, you know, the kids are never good enough for the older generations kind of thing, which I'm like, is very normal of you. And then things like, you know, back in the day, well, for one thing, she talks about how her parents were counterculture, and so she's got that kind of pedigree, I guess. But what amuses me about that is, like, so you're not rebelling against your parents, who are like the first authority figures you ever come across in your life. You're kind of just following their footsteps, and isn't that rebellious of you? I mean, they weren't goths so much, but it's still this whole, like, yeah, okay, you're just doing what your parents are proud of you, and probably, and I don't know, like, if you wanted to really rebel, you could have gone a different, like, there's lots of ways to rebel, is just what I'm trying to say. So she's, like, rebelling against society, but had parental support for that, whereas, you know, someone like me, I grew up in conservative, strict Catholic. You know, we used to go to church every Sunday, and when I stopped going to church, it was a big drama, and I was gonna go to hell, and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, kind of a different situation, so I've come to goth from a very different way. Also, she's in America, and America seemed to have a lot more of that going on, especially, like, you know, being 10 years older than me. But, like, here, we don't really see the cliques as much, because most Australian schools have a school uniform. I know, like, one of the ones around here that's a public school doesn't, but yeah, most of them do have some kind of uniform and dress codes and whatever. And so, like, you can't do the thing that Americans do, where the kids will go to school dressed as their subculture. It's a thing that you could only really do on the weekend or after school if you could be bothered, but you probably have homework and assignments, so good luck to you. So culturally, there's things like that can make it easier for someone to be a proper goth that way. And then, you know, like, America likes to take things to extremes as well, whereas Aussies are a bit more laid back, and it's like, she'll be right, you know, we can do a little bit of goth here and there, but we don't have to do anything too strictly to conform. Yeah, so and then, you know, she talks about community and having friends, going out and doing things and, you know, helping each other make clothes and all that. And I'm just like, that's great if you have them. And also, like, you know, so rebellious, but all your friends are doing it. Like, you know, she grew up in a time where goth was kind of popular amongst youth. Even though, like, the parents, the adults, the authority figures were against it, and there were, you know, always hate groups, which I know was a bigger deal back then, mainly in the UK. There's, you know, Sophie who got killed. Yeah, but it's still, like, the thing that the kids are doing. by the time I come across goth, no one at my school, like, the only people in my school I knew who were goths was one girl in the year below me, and then another one quite a few years below that, but she's more of, like, metal, I think, in hindsight, because I didn't know the difference between all these things. Yeah, that's about it. That's my entire school, the only goths that I knew of. Maybe 3 of us, and I hadn't even bought any dark clothes by then. I think, like, when I was younger, I used to be into Esprit, because Esprit made good, comfortable sports clothes. And I don't know if... I wasn't really in charge of a lot of my purchasing decisions. I went to the shops I was taken to and picked out stuff, and I had this black tracksuit set that had some blue stripes here and then onto the sides of the pants. And I remember, I think maybe Dad might have called me a goth at that point, but I was literally just wearing black trackies, and he made it sound bad, and I'm just like, okay. I just like the black trackies. Yeah. Like, I don't see any goths around. I didn't have friends around, and so, like, that was the closest I got to being goth in high school, I guess, because I just didn't go out, and I also bought into the bullshit that you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, so I thought, okay, it doesn't matter how I dress, people should see me for me. Not how it happens at all. How you dress definitely informs people's first opinions of you, and then, yeah... some people can eventually see through that, but you have to get through the initial nonsense. And yeah, I used to just be dressed very casual, not give a shit. Now I've realized the value of messing with people, so that's a fun reason to dress up, and probably one of the main reasons. And also, you know, dissociation made me dress up a bit. If I didn't dissociate, I would probably just wear trackies my whole life, which I do, like, you know, lazy clothes at home. Day pajamas. Because I don't go anywhere. And what's the point of dressing up if I don't go anywhere? And I know I could dress up for my YouTube videos like Angela does, but I don't care enough. Anyway, like, so I get what she's saying a bit about the commercialization of goth and alternative subcultures and counterculture. And there's, like, some of the things that you see online, I don't even watch them, but, like, I've seen the thumbnails come up and I'm like, oh god. And then the stuff that you see on Instagram, and I imagine it's much worse on TikTok. I wouldn't know because I don't go there. I get all that stuff, but the kids these days, nostalgia for the past and not realizing how much easier it was for her to be a real goth, you know, being in the right place at the right time with the right friends and the right access to things and supportive parents. Yeah, easy for you to say, this is how to be a real goth. And, you know, like, I didn't have access to other music for a long time. I used to just have to listen to what was on the radio, what my parents chucked on, and it wasn't until high school that I could, you know, scrape some money together to buy CDs. And my school friends would be like, oh, you always get the cool CDs. And I'm like, so why are you buying crap? Just buy the cool CDs. Like, so I had, Linkin Park, Evanescence. This is probably about all I could afford. And, you know, she's like, oh, if you want to be goth, you got to listen to this music. And it's like, cool, where's my money coming from to buy these things? Anyway, but no. So her, and, like, you know, her last few videos that have shown up in my feed, it's all this negative stuff, like, oh, what happened to counterculture? What happened to real alternative fashion? You can't buy counterculture. When everyone is a rebel, no one is, kind of thing. And it's like, okay, we get it. You miss the good old days when you were a kid and used to walk 5 miles uphill in both directions to and from school, kind of. I don't know, I'm just like, okay, there's more than one way to be counterculture, and just fitting the time and place that you were in, how countercultural does that make you really? Like, I get it, at the time it was a thing, but it's also, there are other ways to rebel, and does it make you more goth for doing rebellion the right way? I don't know. Like, if you want to rebel these days, you chuck out your phone maybe, just not be online, not use AI, which I don't use AI, but I'm sort of, I'm still online. Online is part of my culture, or I don't know. I actually, like, you know, I don't want to shit on all the YouTube goths though. So one I actually like, I mean, I don't tend to watch YouTube goths anyway. It's just sometimes they've come up in my feed, and, you know, maybe I've been a bit interested in what they had to say. But yeah, I don't seek it out. I don't care. I don't like to be told how to do things, which is funny, because isn't that the original attitude? Is like, you know, you can't tell me what to do, and also you can't label me. I know some of the older goths didn't want to be labeled. It's just like these days, because of the way algorithms work, you kind of have to label yourself something to be discovered. So I get that, and categorization has changed a lot over the years. But the YouTuber that I found more positive out of the like two that I've watched, unless I was looking up, you know, a review of a hair color or something. No, it's Black Friday, I think. She did a one 3 months ago, Who Can Be a Goth? And it was much more positive. And when you look through her channel, like, you know, she talks more about being a goth in general, instead of complaining about the good old days and kids these days and whatever. She's much more open, like, you know, yeah, more welcoming, and like, you know, not trying to be as judgmental. And then her next video is like, normal clothes can look gothic, here's a way to do it if you can't afford all these fancy brands that are around today. I like that attitude a lot more. It's Black Friday versus Angela, what's her name, Angela Benedict. I prefer that attitude, where it's like, because like in the end, goth is just a label. Like, I know in the past it used to be more about, you know, the 80s music and the style that went with it, and there are people who say that if you listen to goth but don't dress up, you're still a goth. And it's like, well, language evolves, and the trouble with, you know, the older gatekeeping goths that I don't like is they kind of deny that. Like, if you think that, like, if you're too strict, it kind of just ends up being like, goth is only the music that was produced in the 80s, and it can't grow and it can't evolve, and now it's even more conforming to a strict set of criteria than the rest of society, which kind of defeats the point. You know, I understand the argument for some gatekeeping, because you don't want the people who are going to bash you to get into the club, or the ones who are just there to try and look at some goth boobs or whatever. But, you know, society changes, evolves, and that was like the 80s. The 80s were 40 years ago. It was a long time ago, and a lot has happened since then, and a lot of things have changed. Like, one thing I like about metal is that it does keep changing and evolving. There are a lot of pockets in metal that get stuck into one thing and don't change, and some of the older metal I get a bit bored with. And then some of the, like, the local metal scene is not particularly adventurous, I feel, although I haven't been out that much. And, you know, it's all merging and evolving with metalcore. Whereas, like, I don't really hear much about what's happening in goth music. Like, is it still just the stuff that's in the 80s? I don't know, but, you know, things evolve and change, and ways of rebelling change, and unfortunately, commercialization is kind of just a thing that happens. Anything that, you know, people like a lot, someone's gonna make some money from it, and you can't push it all away. And also with the whole modern thing that you can buy all these really interesting goth clothes now. Like, on the one hand, yes, it's been commercialized and it's maybe less unique unless you accessorize the shit or modify it yourself. But for someone like me with shit sewing skills and, like, you know, not really understanding how to put things together, it makes things so much easier. And now my creative process is to look at what's in my wardrobe and think about how I'm going to put it together, and the less stress of like spending a week trying to modify something and it not going well and being frustrated and being like, you know, even if I succeed, it's not going to look like what I hoped it would in my mind, because I don't have that skill level. You know, not all of us have the skill, and my skills are elsewhere. Mine are in actually making the music, getting on stage, if I can find it. But my music is too weird because it's combining metal vocals with industrial sounds and probably some of the 90s pop that sunk into my head before I had a chance to, you know, become a thinking being. So Spice Girls was a thing when I was a kid. And it was the big playground argument was, were you Spice Girls or were you Hanson? I was a Spice Girl. Stop right now, thank you very much. I need somebody with a human touch. Hey you, always on the run, gotta slow it down, baby, gotta have some fun. Do 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 do. Always be together. Ba da ba ba. Ba-da-ba-ba, ba-da-ba, stay that way forever, and you know it, we... Okay, I'll stop. You see how deeply it is in my brain. Yeah, anyway, so, like, how do I explain what I am? It's just easier to say goth or metal goth. If I say metal goth, it's like, I listen to metal but I dress goth. That's an easy way to interpret it, and I don't need some gatekeeper telling me whether or not I can use the language, because what language do I use? Do I just use dark alternative? But then people might think I listen to alternative music, and it's funny how alternative music means a specific genre of music now instead of just not mainstream. And it's funny how, like, see, this is another word that's evolved. It means something, like indie music means something, not just that you're independent, it's got a sound to it now. Yeah, I don't know, goth, I think because when society looks at goth, the most obvious thing is the aesthetic. And that's just how it is. So they see the aesthetic, they don't know anything about the music, so they go and label everyone who looks that way a goth. Or emo, you know, if you have your bloody Spider-Man hair, which you know, my hair is just stuck in this part forever because I was a little bit obsessed with symmetry as a kid, and now it goes on with how I see myself split down the middle. Yeah. You know, there's only a few labels that the mainstream understands, and it's just easier. And then, yeah, I don't know, like, the modern thing of all these kids, if they want to dress dark, the thing is, you just let them, they're kids, they're experimenting. Like, we all go through this journey of growth, and one of the things that annoys me about Angela's take and that whole 80s traditionalists, elitists, and whatever, is like they went through an experimentation phase themselves. And I know the kids these days, they're experimenting in a way that almost seems, or like probably does seem insulting to them, because it's like taken goth in these different directions, or like that sort of goth vibe, if you don't want to call it actual goth, they've taken that in different directions and polished it and commercialized it and sexualized it and done all these things to it. But a lot of the kids, like, they're experimenting, and that's just what kids do. You know, you go through your adolescence and early adulthood trying to figure out who you are, and you see these things online, and you didn't have the benefit of growing up in the 80s. You didn't have the benefit of, you know, knowing people who could modify your clothes or help you modify your clothes, know the right people. Society has changed, so like now when you walk down the street as a goth, people barely even blink. It's a different attitude to what people grew up with in the 80s, so it's kind of impossible to be a young person and be completely, truly elite 80s true goth kind of, you know, the situation that we're in doesn't really allow for that, because it's a different time, we've moved on. And kids have different pressures, so the internet is a big part of that. So of course they're going to draw from what they see online, the overly polished Instagram accounts, some of which were produced originally by those older goths, and it's sort of just grown from there and been bastardized through so many iterations, and they're growing up in that environment, and if they see that and think that's what goth is and they're going to do that, they find something they like in it, can you really blame them? I know in like a lot of subcultures, people are like, oh, you have to know the history to really appreciate it. It's like when I first started getting into metal, I heard that a lot. But when I listened to older versions of metal, like I probably came in around the new metal era, Disturbed, who I can't listen to anymore. Their older stuff I still like, the newer stuff, I don't know, are they still making music? But yeah, no, I probably came in when there's a lot more fusion genres and, you know, people experimenting with different things, and then of course the fusion with hardcore, which to me it's all like originally, it's all just like heavy guitars and it's all getting fused, so I struggle to tell the difference sometimes, and I struggle to understand why there's such animosity. The only thing that really gives me a hint is like, what's the audience like? If the audience are crashing into each other, it's probably some version of core, and if they're more polite, it's probably some version of metal. I mean, some of the genres, they're stuck in their ways and they're very distinctive and you can tell straight away. But when it gets to the more interesting part where everything is fusing together, you don't know. Why was I talking about about that? Oh, shit. I've forgotten now. I don't know. I was talking about the kids. The kids, and they growing up in a different world. Oh shit, I completely forgot where I was going with that, and that's my fault for not making any notes. And I think he was also just growling in his sleep, which is a little bit distracting, but I think he's okay. He's probably having some dream, the poor little thing. Yeah, well, music's changed. 80s. This is why I should live stream sometimes so someone can remind me what I was just going on about. I don't know, kids these days, they're growing up in a different environment, finding different kinds of music as well. Yeah, and society sees goth as these particular things, and they're experimenting with their styles. They're discovering new music. There's more different kinds of dark music out there to get into. Whereas, you know, back when goth came out, like, you know, what was it? There was rock, there was metal, there was punk, and it's sort of evolving. Whereas now, like, a lot of those subgenres are already kind of a thing. And, like, is there any new major movement these days, or is it all sort of just intermingling? I don't know, like, what? Gent was kind of a newish thing a little while ago, but now it's not. And you can gent in more than one kind of music without making it totally gent. Gent, 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 gent. I don't know. So what label am I? I don't know. I don't care. Labels are kind of for communication, I feel. You know, because at some point we need a way to communicate stuff without explaining things in, how long is this video now? 42 minutes? Like, you can't have a conversation on every thought you have about who you are and whether or not you fit a certain label every time it happens. So if it's easy to just say, yeah, you're a goth, why not? You know, language evolves, you can't police it all the time, and the way that people mean something changes. That was a clumsy way to say it. Shit, why was I talking about the fusion genre? I don't know what Goth's been doing. Oh my god, he is too cute. I think we should have a cup of tea and just upload this, and I'll leave it on a you know, hanging, like, what was I thinking about? I feel like I was going somewhere. So if I was making a point and I remember it when I'm reviewing this video before I upload it, maybe I'll chuck it in the comments. So check the comments if I finally remember what I was gonna say. Just, yeah, well, Goth Day. I mean, if you want to celebrate it, cool. Apparently it was a UK BBC radio thing. Oh, he's gone. Oh, the whole highlight of this video just left the whole thing, and now we're stuck with just me talking about shit and I don't even know. Oh, that's sad. Yeah, I don't know. Just, you know, people consider me to be goth in the community that I'm in. So I'm like, fine, I'm not gonna waste my time arguing with them about why I don't count as goth. And I don't really want labels, but the fact is that I'm gonna be labeled anyway, and people, when I'm not around, will talk about me in a certain way, and I'm telling you that a lot of them will be saying that I'm some kind of goth chick. And there's so many different ways to be alternative, and there's so many different ways to rebel, and it kind of depends on your situation. And I think I've kind of made my point. I think. You know, that it's not as easy as, like, just being like, oh, you have to be an 80s goth. Only listen to 80s style goth music. And, you know, like, goth itself already splintered into so many subgenres. Like, cybergoth is super distinctive. And then you have other ones, and sometimes some of these older elitist goths will get cross at that. And be like, that's not goth, but it's like, it's all grown out of it. Oh, I think I was talking about the history of music. You know, where did goth come from? People tell me that about metal as well, but I don't like older styles of metal. Especially older styles of metal don't sound heavy because we've gone so far down and the metal genre has evolved to become so heavy, and modern metal is pretty heavy that, like, the original pioneers of metal just sound like heavy rock to me now. And then, like, how far back do you go? Because apparently that has, like, metal and rock, it has roots in blues, but I like blues even less. And then if you go back and back and back and back and back and back and back, eventually we're back at classical and Wagner, who was like the metal of the classical music world kind of thing. Like, you know, how far back do I need to know my history? I think that's what my point was. It only took me like 5 minutes, 10 minutes to remember. Yeah, this is the thing. When some of the older goths are complaining about younger goths, like, how far back do they have to go? You know, goth just exists as an amorphous idea these days. And you kind of can't really control the label now that it's out there. You know, there's some nostalgia, and yeah, there's things, the principles that used to be a thing, but history is constantly being made. History isn't static. And the garbage that we're talking about today, someone will complain about it, you know, in 50 years' time. Oh, do you remember when this was a thing? And God knows what fashion will be like then, if humanity even still exists, because at the rate we're going, who knows? Not just war, I'm not even just talking about war, like population decline and declining living conditions, even in wealthy countries. Like, who can afford anything apart from the very top end of everything? But that's a whole other different topic. And yeah, like, I don't envy being a kid these days either, because the stuff that they have to deal with, you know, it's not just the older generations trying to police whether or not they can or can't be goth because they do it a little bit differently. It's the actual state of, like, can you get a decent job that isn't just going to be eaten up by AI the moment you finish your qualification? Maybe you should go get a trade, but hell knows, in another 20 years' time, will the robots be doing your plumbing for you? You know, things, and the whole thing about AI and the effect on people's thinking and whether it's making people lazier in terms of thinking. And then all the culture wars and people, like, having these extreme ideas and not tolerating nuance, not tolerating someone with a slightly different opinion even, not even being on the other side, just being on the same side but not the right way. You know, it's hard being a kid, and, like, whether or not they're being goth enough is, like, the least of anyone's problems, really. Like, yeah, sad for what you grew up with and some of the attitudes and some of the counterculture, but goth, I mean, I don't see a huge amount of it in Sydney these days. I think, you know, people mostly go to, like, metal music events. There's still the goth picnic. I haven't been yet. I always find a reason not to go. 'Cause, like, what would I even do there? Just hang out with people and have food? I'm so, like, this is why I go to music events, because at least when I go to a music event, I can listen to music in a different way, and, like, I don't like the excessive volume, but at least I put my earplugs in and you can feel the bass and all that, which I can't really do at home because I live in the suburbs. Our neighbors complain about everything, or they used to. I think they're a bit too scared to complain to me now. Yeah, so there are some things that are a bit different about going out, and it's like a bit of an adventure, but it needs to have that music element. Otherwise, what's the point? Like, am I just meant to stand around and talk with people? But that's my problems, being mentally ill as I am. No, like, you know, what do you expect the kids these days to do? To just do everything that you did back then, but within today's context as best they can? I think that ship is well and truly past. The kids are seeing what they see online. and they have access to more resources if they can find the money for it. You know, they can order interesting clothes if they want to, which is like good for them. You know, I wish I could have done that when I was younger because it was so hard to find anything good anywhere and I didn't have the skills. And there's so much more music to listen to and there's all kinds of art. And yeah, and I really hope one of the things, probably the only thing I really like about AI is that people are starting to value actual human things again. So maybe the kids will start doing more art, at least, and creative stuff if they also follow that, you know. Once computer-generated stuff has no value anymore because it's too easy, you know, maybe they'll actually start using their hands again. Yeah, that's about it. I mean, like, when I say AI, the thing we call AI, I don't consider to be artificial intelligence, but that's the word that's going around. I'm fine with, like, machine learning in certain applications, like medical or whatever. Like, there are some applications for it, but the thing that mainstream we're calling AI with these chatbots and image generators that, you know, take so many resources to produce garbage, I'm not into that. Yeah, and then what else? Oh no. Oh, I feel like I was going somewhere again and I lost it. But I should probably, like, look at my Winnow mail updated and it's super annoying now. Yeah, I don't know, like, the kids, they see stuff, life's evolved, labels have evolved, you know, the 80s was 40 years ago, might be time to let go of some of that. Just accept that this is the world we live in, and old school goth is kind of impossible for the next generation. And yeah, sort of getting offline is probably the most rebellious thing. Complaining online, like a lot of us do, very mainstream. How countercultural of you. I don't know. That was a lot of rambling and I'm very tired and I need some tea. I don't know if I made any particular point. That's why I said it was a ramble rant kind of thing, because there's not any point to it. It's just, yeah, I don't really see myself as goth, but I'm not going to necessarily stop using the label because it makes it easy for communication, but I would continue to do things my own way. And when I'm at home, I mostly can't be bothered to dress up. And when I go out, if I have the energy, I'll dress up. And I'll keep doing my music, my art, my random YouTube rambling, my random terrorizing of the locals. Except that, like, actually the reception that I get is usually a lot better than you would expect. There's some older conservative people who are stuck in their ways, the same way that old goths are stuck in their ways. But for the most part, people are actually pretty interested in what I'm doing. And it's like, okay, cool. Yeah, and there's more than one way to do things, and just be yourself in the end. You can experiment if you're a kid as well. You can experiment if you're an adult. You know, you can experiment, and you don't have to do things the way that, you know, these goth elders and elitists and whatever. You don't have to do what they say, and just experiment, find what works for you, and if it happens to be something they disapprove of, good, you're rebelling against them. Let's rebel against the elitists goths who are so into rebellion back in the day but now can't stand when the kids do something different. I just think, like, I understand some of their point, but then some of it has a whole lot of, like, hypocrisy and contradiction in it, and that's the thing that amuses me about the whole goth thing, and the argument over the label, and yeah. I don't know, and I don't think there's a label that suits me well. Like, even the schizoid thing, like, it's technically a diagnosis that's on my file, but I refuse to conform to that too. So, what am I? But this is also why it's so hard for me to get on stage, because no one knows what I am. Even my music is weird, and even my bonsai was weird. Technically, I was following traditional principles, but my boss, who was my teacher in the past as well, like, you know, he's always like, somehow it just looks different, even though technically you're following the rules. Somehow it's just not what he's expecting. But my bonsai used to sell well, so something in that. Anyway, if you got to this point in the video and you're mad at anything I said, I'm surprised you got this far, but well done. Thanks for giving me the chance. instead of just, you know, rage quitting at the first thing, because I know there's some people who will just hear one thing they don't like and not listen to anything else. I appreciate the people who will disagree with me but still try and listen and see if I'm going to come to a better point later. I'm sorry to disappoint you, because probably I've just rambled in circles and I can't even remember what I've said. But, you know, like, good on you for, like, this is one thing that I would like to become a trend, is people actually trying to hear each other out. And not just constantly complaining and not just knee-jerk complaining. I will put a disclaimer that I've only watched a few videos from each of the YouTubers I've mentioned, Angela and Black Friday. And I don't know a huge amount about their lives, and frankly, I don't care. It's just those things that I saw that made me think, you know what, Angela is a little bit too bitter for me. I mean, yeah, goths can be moody, that's part of the image, but it's a little bit over the top and it starts... I don't know, it's excessive, and I just can't imagine making videos about the same thing all the time. You know, you can see by my channel that I can't focus on one thing forever. Whereas Black Friday, more positive and, you know, trying to find different things to talk about, and it's less complaining about everything. I say as I complain about everything. I'm gonna go bye.